This is the Dallas Morning News.
Hey everybody, it's Evan Grant from the Dallas Morning News, dallasnews.com, and you are listening to Sports Days Insider. I am taking over as host duties this week. Kevin Sherrington is on a pool or in a pool or on a boat or fishing somewhere. He's at some body of water. Irrelevant to us because I get to seize control of the airwaves and talk nothing but Rangers with my good buddy Shawn McFarland, my teammate and partner on the Rangers beat. Shawn, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful, Evan. How are you?
I'm doing better because we are now post the trade deadline. And so we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the trade deadline, and I'm going to allow you, as we start this whole thing, to tell me how much you hate the trade deadline.
I do hate the trade deadline. And I do want to preface this with when I was like purely a baseball fan, when I was in high school and all I cared about was...
Right, before you were a jaded and cynical journalist.
Correct. When I still had like luster and like a light in my eyes. I loved the trade deadline. I spent like the entire final week of July just glued to my phone, reading reports, reading rumors, reading every piece of information that could possibly come out about the deadline. Now, as a reporter, I'm just so tired of rumors. I really am. It's not that I don't think that some of them are important, not that I don't think they aren't legitimate. I just think you look at yesterday, and I spent the entire day screaming in my head. Of course, the Rangers are listening. Of course, they are listening on all their players because that's what teams do when other teams reach out and say, we want to trade for player X. Here's what we'd have to offer. And then the Rangers say, no, thank you. We don't like that deal. That is just how teams operate at all times. And it has it has very little to do with like the position the team is in. I really think so. So I spent all day yesterday surfing through reports and tweets from fans about how the Rangers were listening and on everyone and what that means. That's what teams do at the deadline. They listen. That's what good teams do. Good teams listen. So it's all to say that I'm just a little tired of rumors, and the deadline is that distilled into one full day.
Listen, for fans, I get how exciting it is because it comes down to whether it's baseball's version of the NFL draft or college's recruiting period, or now the NIL transfer portal. People want to know about potential possibilities that their teams is going to get better. I get all that, and that's very exciting. I think from a reporter's perspective, there's some vanity. We'd love to be able to break the news, and that's just not how the system works anymore, because news seems to be filtered to one or two sources out there. But the journalist in me, the old school journalist in me, it often deals with this this issue, right? That like my job is to find the truth. My job is to sort out fact from fiction. And half the time that you're writing rumors or chasing rumors, you don't know if you're chasing fiction. And it probably is fiction. And to your point about teams listening, I think if a team isn't listening, it's not doing its job. And so I've always wrestled with that. You never know what somebody's going to offer you. You never know if somebody's going to offer you the moon and sun for absolutely nothing. So I think it's imperative to take every phone call and to treat every phone call seriously until it's not. But that said, I mean, there were some real things that came out of the whole deadline period where the Rangers were concerned. Not a lot of it confined to actual movement, because yesterday, as we record this on Tuesday, the only move that the Rangers made at the deadline, Shawn, was to trade Josh Smith and basically shed what was left of his salary, which is about $1,032,000, or $1,032,000.
I was going to say $1 million and then $30 just on the side.
Million.
Can you Venmo that, or
$1,032,848? I think is what my calculations were. to Toronto, along with Josh Stephen from Grand Prairie, minor league pitcher who feels a little bit like he's plateaued in the system after an intriguing start. For left-hander Adam Macko, notable because he was born in Slovakia, but also because he is a left-hander and could potentially eventually be a starter or a reliever. I think the Rangers are sending him to AAA Round Rock for the time being, and will sort all of that out. They did obviously make the move for Chase Silseth and Logan O'Hoppe with Anaheim in the week leading up to the deadline that seemed to indicate to most people that they would be more like buyers. O'Hoppe obviously can be a catcher potentially for the future with multiple years of control. He's gone to AAA and will continue to work down there as he tries to recapture what made him a very promising young catcher a couple of years ago. Silseth goes into the Rangers bullpen and obviously fills a need that's much more immediate with Jacob Junis on the IL for at least 2 weeks. But both those moves potentially help the 2026 team. They also help the future, and I think that's where the Rangers' head was at, is that they wanted to marginally help the 2026 team's chances, but also start building stock for the future. So all of that said, the big story that came out of yesterday was that the Rangers had a chance to trade Jacob deGrom, reportedly to the Atlanta Braves, and Jacob said he wanted to stay in Texas. Now, Jacob never said the words outright that he refused the deal. He said he wanted to remain in Texas. And I want to make it clear to fans, because I know that there will be a narrative that always comes up when a player uses what amounts to his no trade clause, that somehow the player is putting over on the team, and that's not the case. Jacob came here, said he wanted to win here. I believe everything he said, and he just wants to live up to the letter of the contract. He came here to pitch 5 years. He intends to pitch here 5 years. So there is nothing wrong with that. From your perspective, Shawn, what was your take on what deGrom said yesterday to us, and where, just the impact of that?
Yeah. We spoke with deGrom in the clubhouse probably a couple hours after that report came out, and he gave a really, what I thought, genuine and impassioned case about why he wanted to be here, why he believes in this team, and why he wants to win here. And he signed, to your point, he signed here to win. He was around in 23 when they won a World Series, and I believe he wants to be a part of that again with this team. So I think when you look at it that way, something that Skip has talked about, and like a lot of people in sports talk about, is like a player-led culture, player-led dynamic. You mentioned it in your story. I pointed out to Jacob, but they put the general over his nameplate above his clubhouse. I think statements like that and the way Jacob made it, I think that can have an impact and go a long way in a clubhouse that now effectively is in a position where it can still contend for a division title this year. Now, I think the other side of it is, if you're in the camp that this team is plateaued, this core is plateaued, and they've been average for effectively 2 years now, this might have been your last best chance to recoup some value for Jacob deGrom. With the lockout coming up next year, potential lockout, I should say, coming up next year, this might have been your last best chance to get real value for him. So I think those are the two sides of this deal right now.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I do think that deGrom is the kind of guy there will be people who will say, well, doesn't he want to win? Didn't he want to go to a team that had a better chance to win? I don't think that's the way Jacob looks at it. I think he looks at it as this is a place he's invested in. This is a place where he came to be a part of a championship core. I don't see mercenary as part of his view on the world. I think it's pretty simple, to use his walk-up music. I think he's a pretty simple man with a pretty simple perspective. I came here to win. I came here to pitch and win. I want to see that through. I think the long-term ramifications now are that, okay, you're not going to trade Jacob deGrom. He's going to pitch through 27, if there is a 27 here, when his contract expires. And he will make $37 million for 2027. I think that there was not a tremendous amount of interest in Corey Seager, or the Rangers would have possibly as a strategic move been more aggressive in making a deal there, because they knew they weren't going to be able to trade DeGrom. The only way they were going to be able to turn this ship financially long term would be to get to move Seager's contract. So I don't think there was much interest in Seager. But Seager now will get 5 and 10 rights, having been in the big leagues 10 years and 5 years with the Rangers after this year. And he will also have the ability for complete no trade protection. And I think the chances of him taking a trade maybe even less than Jacob. So even if the Rangers decide after this winter that they want to trade him, and if there's value, they can certainly try. And there are things they could do, both benevolent and with high pressure, to try and entice him to waive the no trade. They could try and buy him out of the no trade with money. That's the benevolent way. Or they could tell Corey Seager, if it becomes antagonistic, that, hey, if you're here, you're going to play first base or DH. And that's the antagonistic way. But if Corey's not going to take a trade and Jacob's not going to take a trade, then it becomes incumbent upon ownership to say, we signed these guys with the idea that we were going to have a $250 million payroll or whatever it was. You cannot operate a team that doesn't have big holes with two guys making $67 million between the two of them, and another two guys who will be making $50 million between the two of them, and Nathan Eovaldi and Brandon Nimmo next year. You can't operate a team in a middle payroll right now, 190, 185, 190, where the Rangers are, with four guys making over $100 million between them. And so the Rangers either have to find a way to move one of those contracts, and we just went through the reasons why that's going to be really difficult, or they need to be willing to up their payroll, or otherwise they're just going to be stuck in the same situation again. And at that point in time, Shawn, you're looking at, this team has one winning season since the end of 2016. I think you and I have both seen plenty of occasions this year where it seems like the fans are disengaged and feel somewhat disenfranchised. I think it could put the Rangers in a really poor situation with their fans. It's not, I guess what I'm getting at is, it doesn't paint a really attractive picture for the future.
No, I think that's 100% correct. I think the way I've looked at it too is, as of a week ago, this team was in first place, and it was an above 500 team. And I did not really get the sense that fans were like all in on buying for this team. And that to me is a flag. I don't know if it's a red flag, what kind of flag it is, but
we should put this qualifier out there, right? I mean, our greatest interaction with fans still remains Twitter, and Twitter by and large has become an unserious place. It still somewhat works for sports, but less and less so, and we hear more from unhappy people than we do from happy people.
That's a really good point. I always think of, when you look at like reviews for a restaurant and it's always bad reviews, I don't think people who had a great time are leaving reviews. I think the people who are angry are leaving reviews. And I think that goes the same way with fans on Twitter. So that's a really good qualifier. But that being said, this was a first place team as a week ago. And even whether it was on Twitter or even just the vibe at the ballpark, I never got the vibe that this fan base was like super rallying behind a team that I thought was kind of fun to watch, at some points the last few months. And I think that goes back to your point about kind of where this team's relationship with the fan base is right now, as they kind of navigate through a very top heavy roster with a complicated future, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I look at 2026, and yeah, this team could get on a run. It may take 10 days or 2 weeks of great baseball to win the division. Right now, the Astros are playing 10 days or 2 weeks of great baseball. And I think from the 3 days that we spent in Houston, one thing rang out is that the Astros have a player who can carry them across the finish line in Yordan Alvarez, who is the best player in the American League right now. And that might be the difference in the AL West race. The Rangers believe they have a player capable of that, and Corey Seager. I'm not yet to see it this year, partly because he's been hurt, but also because he got off to a really poor start. And he's come back. He's hit since he's come back. What's he got? A couple of doubles, right?
Yeah.
No homers in the first 4 games. Really, if you look at symbolism, he's come back. The Rangers have played the first 4 games with him back. They've lost all 4, and they have scored how many runs have they scored? 8 runs in 4 games. So he hasn't had a huge impact positively on the offense. That's not necessarily due entirely to Corey. I think that's much more a factor of guys who are starting to get overexposed. The Austin Wynns, the Cam Collies, Justin Foscues, maybe even Nicky Lopez to some extent. But their chances to win the American League West as of us recording this on Tuesday morning are currently, they were 23% going into yesterday. They are at 19% today. How viable do you think it is for this team to actually win? I will say this, Shawn, right? Starting yesterday when they played a Giants team that basically didn't have enough players to fill out a lineup, which they lost 5-1, they have started a stretch now that will be 19 consecutive games against losing teams. And teams that have dealt, right? They play the Giants this week, who dealt 6 players. They play Baltimore, that just dealt Adley Rutschman. And then they go to L.A., Sacramento, come home to play the Nationals, and then the Angels again before they go off to play the White Sox. So that's the stretch. It's got to happen now. It's got to happen now.
Yeah. Yeah, you ask how viable. I think it's viable in the sense that I still don't know how sold I am on the division as a whole. Look, I think it's pretty clear. I don't think you can argue that the Astros aren't better than the Rangers. The Astros are better than the Rangers. They kind of beat their butt this weekend, right? I also don't think they didn't have an amazing deadline. The Mariners had a weird deadline. I don't think anyone in the division got so much better yesterday that it's like, well, they're going to run away with this. I think it's the big thing the Rangers have going for them right now. And yeah, we have this 2-week stretch coming up where they play a bunch of teams they should be beating. How many times have we said that this year where it's like, man, this 2-week stretch, if they go 10-5, if they do this or that, if they can win these series, it's a totally different world. And then they go 500 and they're in the same boat they were the 2 weeks prior. I just feel like that's happened so many times this year where you think they have a runway and then you look up at the end of it and kind of nothing has changed. There are 500, give or take a few games team. So yes.
I will say this, right? The last time they went through a stretch like this that was noticeable to me was when they, after they finished that stretch that ended with the Cubs, and it was mid-May, had Arizona, Houston, Colorado, Anaheim, Houston, Kansas City. We thought that was going to be a big stretch for them. They spent most of that stretch without Corey Seager and Wyatt Langford. And so they didn't perform well. The difference now, they believe, is they've got Langford in more of a group back and in more of a groove. They've got Seager back, and they anticipate having Josh Young and what amounts to a fully healthy lineup, but hopefully they think by the end of the week, maybe for the Baltimore series. When this lineup is fully healthy, how good is it, do you think?
Yeah. We're going to find out, right? Or theoretically, I think it can be pretty good. I think if Wyatt is healthy and playing as he's cooled off a little bit lately, but we saw not that long ago he was playing like all-star caliber baseball. I do believe that Corey Seager will be better. Josh Young's been incredibly consistent this year. I don't know will the time off change that? I don't know. He's been remarkably consistent this year, so I think probably not. But to your earlier point, like, you now need those guys because a lot of the other guys have cooled off. The guys, the Nicky Lopez's, the Austin Wynns, the Elias Diaz's, the guys who were able to help this team float. Look, on this 5-6 game losing streak they're on right now, they're 5 for 41 with runners in scoring position. And that, to me, when you talk about Corey coming back and hitting well, but it's not really making a difference on the bottom line, that's why. They've gotten guys on. Corey Seager's gotten on, half a dozen times. It's just, are there other guys in this lineup who can do anything about that? So theoretically, yes, if you get Josh Young back and Wyatt's healthy and Corey's healthy and,
one thing I think that does change, like if you get Josh Young back and he's productive, Josh goes into the lineup and Jake Berger slides down because Jake is, again, in one of his stretches where it doesn't look good and it's not productive. And he's had lots of opportunities in the last week to produce and hasn't come through. And you and I both know after almost 2 years of watching Jake Berger, we enjoy covering Jake Berger. We love talking to him. When he's also very honest, and when he's hot, he can really be hot.
Yeah.
When he's not, it is a big zero because there's not a lot of contact there, not a lot of productive outs, and it just kind of, it can suck up the offense's energy.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Like, there have been stretches this year where and Skip always says it, he can carry this lineup for 2 weeks at a time. The thing is, what happens in the other 2 weeks? So, look, right. I think this team, as we've said a lot of times, is in a really decent position right now over these next 2 weeks with some guys coming back, the lineup getting healthier, and the schedule at hand to go and do something. And also, it's like we keep saying that and they don't, and they continue to kind of be right up atop the division. So I don't know. Like that's the other thing I come back to is like I'm still just not sold on this division as a whole. But you have to take advantage of these opportunities. And we look at last night's game. They made 5 errors. They looked really flat. It was one of the uglier games I've seen this season. And like that's a massive missed opportunity. You get a quality start from Cal Quantrill, a really good start against a team that sold 6 players yesterday, and you don't take advantage of it. Those are the games that will kill you this season, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, yeah, you take all that into account, right? The Giants traded off a bunch of players. They were having to cobble together a lineup. Cal Quantrill gave them a quality start. All those things. And they still lost, and they lost largely because, they didn't score runs. Okay, it's hard. Let's say that it's hard to win when you don't score runs, but you make it hard on yourself when you commit 5 errors. And there just were plays in the field that looked sloppy and looked like a team. I made one of my cardinal mistakes last night. I asked Skip Schumacher about effort, and obviously he defended the team. And I didn't mean to insult him. But, when a ball gets through an outfielder's legs like it did with Nimmo, that looks bad. When Corey Seager whiffs on a throw down to second base, on a pickoff throw at second base, and then just kind of turns and looks at the ball, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, and I waited out Nimmo last night to talk to him about the error and the game situation. He's a stand-up guy and took accountability for the error and said it was embarrassing. This can't happen. All the things you would expect Brandon Nimmo to say. And he made some great points about, look, he's like, I know what our record is when we score first. And I know what our record is when we don't score first. And I let them score first. And that was the theme of the night. And he acknowledged, like, as I know Cal Quantrill did when we talked to him, like, I don't think we didn't have energy. We wanted to win today. We came to play, but they also acknowledged that like this looks really bad given where they are right now. That yes, that it wasn't a good look.
And I do want to put one qualifier on this. And I think if there's one thing that I've learned over the years with trade deadlines, it's that game one after the deadline is not, it's good for copy, but it's not necessarily a real indicator of where the team will be. The trade deadline is an anxious day for everybody. And if you're a team like the Rangers that was kind of teetering on which way were they going to go, one way or another, and then they've got rumors that DeGrom didn't that they were gonna that they wanted to trade DeGrom, and that they didn't trade DeGrom, and that they didn't add anybody, that will sap some energy out of a team. And so I expect that they will, and by the time this drops, that we'll have a better idea, because they will have played another game. But I do think that sometimes you can look at teams, particularly that are in the Rangers state. I remember when the Rangers traded for Cliff Lee, and I think he came right out and gave up 5 runs in his first start. It's not necessarily indicative of what you're going to get. The most important thing now for the Rangers is to get everybody healthy and to get everybody moving in the right direction. And I think the offense has been better this year than it was a year ago, but I think it's really incumbent on the offense to start to show that it has another gear, and to start to beat teams down. I think that will improve the pitching. I think it will make the late game pitching much more manageable for Skip Schumacher. I think it will. It gives them the opportunity to get on a hot streak because of just how things would line up, where you're better able to line up your bullpen, where the starters don't have to be perfect, but they can give you innings, all of those things. And so I think that it's really incumbent upon this offense to start to get hot, to simply put, get hot. Do you think it's capable of that?
Yeah, I do. I don't know how much.
Yeah, he said with a big sigh, in a completely unconvincing way.
I am pretty confident that this is a average offense, which is, that complimentary, given what we've seen in the last 2 years. And I think it has the upside to be an above average offense. It's all just going to come down to the guys we've named over and over. You don't have to squint to see how it would work, right? You've gotten the things you needed, which are Jock Peterson bounce back here, Jake Berger bounce back here, Josh Young bounce back here. Those are the things you needed. And I think in spring training, if you had said all 3 of those guys have a WRC plus of 100 plus, you would say, okay, this is going to be a pretty good lineup. So that part is there. So I think it's gonna come down to Wyatt and Corey, honestly. And can they be the aircraft carriers that we hear about? Can they be the guys that can carry this lineup?
It's the same thing we just saw in Houston, right? I mean, we saw Alvarez and Jeremy Pena just crush the Rangers. Mm-hmm. Teams that you need, it's not just one player. It's easy to say one player can put a team on its back and carry them. You really need 2 threats in that lineup. And yeah, it's imperative that Wyatt and Corey, or Corey and Josh Young or Nemo, you've got to have 2 guys really go off, and 2 guys who are capable of doing it. Corey is the obvious choice there, and Wyatt is the other obvious choice. So, yeah, you need to start to see that from those guys.
Yeah, God, imagine, to your point about Houston, imagine how it must feel to be a hitter in that lineup and know that Yordan Alvarez is also in that lineup. Just I can't imagine, I don't want to know if it's relief or what it is, but knowing that it's we have a guy who can take over the world.
Well, and that's the thing. I think there's it's weird the way you put that, right? Because the thought that ran through my head is, yeah, they know that Yordan Alvarez is in that zone. I think the Rangers hope that Corey or Wyatt are in that zone. And when you hope that, I think there's this the thing that gets in your head is, well, if I can just do a little more it'll make it easier for those guys to get hot. And when you try to do more than you're capable of, you
Yeah.
end up doing less.
Yeah.
And that goes down the list and down the list and down the list. So that's one thing the Rangers have to fight through. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how Corey responds here immediately after now that the deadline has passed.
Yeah, I agree. And I honestly, same thing for DeGrom too. And he talked about it yesterday about how he needs to be better and all this. You look at that Houston series. I don't know how different it is if DeGrom and Evaldi pitch like we've seen them pitch, but it changes the dynamic of it. And those
Well, that
guys
was
know
the
the
most
world anyway.
disheartening thing for me from the Astros
Yeah,
series is you scheduled everything so your two aces, which are supposed to be the strong point of this team, to go games 1 and 2, and neither one of them got through more than 5 innings. Right? I think you got 8 1/3 innings or 8 2/3 innings out of the two of them.
yeah. And those are two of the most like hyper aware players on this team in terms of what they can and can't do and why they're unable to do certain things. They're very keenly aware of who they are as athletes. And Jacob talked about that yesterday in terms of, he has to be better and there's expectations on him. And now he's the one who said, like, I want to win here. I don't want to, again, as we always say, it's not about one guy and you don't want to put more pressure on a guy than there needs to be. But, I do think certain games look different over the last month if DeGrom is healthier. He does have this hip glute thing.
It's not been a good month for either Jacob or Nathan. It has not, and that I think I pointed that out in my column after the DeGrom game that this is maybe the most disheartening thing is that these guys are your case that we can win a playoff race, we can win a playoff series as long as we've got Jake and Nathan going 1 and 2. We're as good as anybody in a short playoff series, and that just hasn't been the case lately.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's again, that was supposed to be the strength of this team. We knew there'd be some regression from last year where they were the best rotation in baseball, but that was supposed to be the strength. And I think, yes, it's also on them, but you also need Kamar Rocker to remain consistent. You need Mackenzie Gore to, can he ever reverse seasons what he had last year where he has a great second half? Is that possible? You need Jack Leiter to hopefully come back and be healthy. You don't know what you'll get out of Montgomery or Bradford. Like, the rotation to me is just like kind of a huge question mark right now.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, the expectations they had for Mackenzie Gore have not come to fruition. On the positive side, I've not seen a pitcher be able to adjust from a rough inning as well as Mackenzie seems to be able to do.
Yeah.
On the negative side, I've not seen a pitcher have more consistently an ugly rough inning that he has to adjust from over the course of a game than Mackenzie has this year. So he's been inconsistent. You don't want to ask Kamar Rocker to be your leader at this point in time. He's still so young in terms of major league experience, and obviously Jack Leiter is still on the IL. So the guys who are making Wyatt's not making money, but the guys who are making money need to live up to their salaries.
Yeah.
That's the only way to say it.
No, Wyatt got a big signing bonus. That's I'll count that. No, you're right. I mean, that's to go full circle. I mean, that's the core of this team was built to win, right? These free agent contracts were signed, these trades were made with the idea that this core could be a winning core, and it was for 1 year. It's been 3 years since we saw that.
And yeah, my operating stance now is more and more of this. The Rangers did things backwards. They bought a core to give their minor league system time to start developing players. They weren't willing to continue to invest in free agency to allow the minor league system to get fully healthy and as deep as, say, the Dodgers system got. And when they scaled back payroll, then they had to start making trades in order to acquire and access more talent. And that started to thin the minor league system. And so now you not only have an aging core at the big leagues, but you don't have a core that you can really count on coming from the minor league level. I'm trying to identify what this team's core is for the future, and the best I can come up with for a core four right now is Langford, Jacob Latz,
who's 30,
Sebastian Walcott, who hasn't played a major league game, and who?
Yeah. No,
Evan
I
Carter?
mean,
Evan
like
Carter hasn't demonstrated that yet.
you hoped it would be. I think after last year, you would have said Jack Leiter, right? Given how he pitched last year, I think you would have said Mackenzie Gore after the trade acquisition. Maybe things look different if Jack is healthy, and we're sitting here saying, "Oh yeah, he's definitely a part of this core." But you're hoping it's one of those three young pitchers in the rotation right now. But to your point, outside of Sebastian Walcott, who is not, I don't want to say he's far from the majors, but he's coming off elbow surgery and hasn't played a game above Double A, and he hasn't played the field yet this season.
And in all likelihood, if he's going to be a part of your core with Corey Seager here, he's going to have to move positions.
Correct.
So he's going to have to learn a new position that he hasn't played very much in the minor leagues.
Correct. And outside of him, there aren't, frankly, any top prospects who are close to helping. Look, they've cycled through several different pitching prospects this season. A Winston Santos, a Jose Corniel, David Dalililo's had a rough season where he had to go to Arizona and kind of go through the mechanical, development process. Leandro Lopez did not look good before he went on the injured list. Like, that tier of pitchers that we thought were close to the majors have kind of just fallen flat this year. And there aren't a ton of hitters on the cusp either. A lot of the talented hitting prospects are in single A or are still too early in Double A to talk about them having a major league impact. Is that
Yep.
If you look at the next year, 2 years maybe, I don't know what the core is, like you said.
And so if you're going to have a core that you build around, it's either got to come from free agency, which it doesn't appear that Ray Davis is willing to spend on it at this point, or you've got to trade for it, and they don't have the ability to trade for it. So the future is going to be, I think the immediate future here is going to be dicey. When I say the immediate future, I'm talking about 2027. And who knows? Maybe we won't even play baseball in 27, and that will solve that issue for us. But in the meantime, the guys that currently constitute the core, Evaldi, DeGrom, Seager, Wyatt Langford, those guys have got to carry this team. If they're going to make a playoff run, they've got to carry this team. You've got to get ace performances from those two, and you've got to get dominant offensive performances from Wyatt and Corey.
Yeah, and the opportunity's there, right? You mentioned the week schedule, the next 2 weeks. Like, a runway is there where if all of that clicks, you're looking at a first place team and you're forgetting all about a quiet deadline because, as Brandon Nimmo said last night to me, like, I think the pieces are there. Like, and theoretically they are. If everything is firing, the pieces are there. We just have to see it.
And I do want to point out one thing, and I pointed this out on the Rangers podcast earlier. We do talk about the Rangers' easy schedule, and it is currently, I believe, the second easiest in Major League Baseball the rest of the way. But while they're playing this 19-game stretch over the next couple of weeks, starting on the 10th of August, the Astros are playing the Giants, Mariners, Angels, and A's. So they've got a stretch that's not so difficult themselves right at that same point in time. So the Rangers have dug themselves a hole. They're only 2.5 games back. It's not that big of a hole, but they have got to get going. And I have not seen any sign yet that they are capable of an extended long-term run of success.
Yeah, we see 4 or 5 game stretches every now and then where you think, oh, this is where it's going to turn. I think some guys have talked about that too this season, where you'll see it click for like half a week, right? And you think, man, if this could be it, this looks really good. All the things we talk about are coming into place. And then something happens that just shakes them out of it for another half a week or another week. I think the month of July was a good microcosm for that. There were so many times where it's just like, man, this team is really getting a little run going here. They're looking good. They're beating some good teams. And then they just kind of fall flat. And if that's what August is going to be like too, then yeah, this isn't a playoff team.
Correct. Well, I think we've brought everybody down just far enough in the past 40 minutes. And so we're going to sign off. Maybe Kevin will be back next week. Maybe we'll talk more Rangers. Maybe Kevin won't be back. Who knows? We don't know anything here. But until next time, thank you guys for joining us for Rangers Talk. Hopefully we'll be back with Kevin next week because I miss my pawpaw. In the meantime, Shawn, thank you for joining us. And from everybody in here to everybody out there, so long.